Hey folks, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking a quick video. I got a subscriber who kind of commented on this, and they were wondering after watching one of my videos about which barrel will take suppressors and which type they can thread on adapters for that. And I guess in the original video it wasn't very clear, so it's easier just to explain it through a visual video like this, just to talk about this. So this is kind of a specialized video for this one particular subscriber. I think it's kind of an interesting thing to talk about, and maybe add more to the body of knowledge in the airsoft world, in case anyone's wondering. But anyway, for those who are into these pistols, like here's an H&K USP right here. As you can see, the big question is, can this thread a suppressor? And the short answer is no. The reason being, of course, is that there's no threads for it, right? So if you look down the barrel, if you look carefully, right, you'll notice that it's pretty much a smooth inner barrel, and there are no threads on the outside. And I'm going to pull the slide back here just to demonstrate a little bit more clearly. But as you can see, smooth barrel, and there's nothing can be attached here. If you were to compare that, and what I mean threads, I mean it has to look like this basically in order for you to take a suppressor and mount it on. Now there will be different threads with different directions. That's another story. But other guns, such as like this one here, this is a WE G19, and even though this doesn't have the threads barrel right here, so you can't just attach a suppressor like this. There's nothing to thread it onto. There are little grooves or threads in the inside, as you can see. So notice how this one isn't smooth like the H&K USP. This one's threaded, and the internal threads, right? So what you can do is you can get a thread adapter, and notice how this one's smaller right here. This one threads into those little grooves right there. And so in this case, this one is a, I believe this is a clockwise thread. Again, you'll hear that terminology a lot, and basically if you just Google it, basically what that means is there's counterclockwise and clockwise threads. So clockwise means if you point it facing you, right? So if the gun's facing you right this way, right, and you were to see which direction you spin to tighten it, if you spin it to the right and it tightens it, right, like in this case right here, this is going clockwise. This is a clockwise thread right here. There are other variants out there. This one's not the case, right? But there are other variants that you have to turn counterclockwise to tighten it. So this is a clockwise, so you thread it on right there. But you'll see that now that you got the adapter on, it looks like this, right? So now you got the suppressor, right? This is actually a 14mm negative clockwise, right? Because now I got to attach the suppressor, but the suppressor, if you were to face it towards you, right? To roll it, you don't spin it to the right. In this case, you have to spin it to the left. So that's a 14mm negative clockwise. Let me see here. I'm attaching it by spinning it to the left right here, as you can tell, or anti-clockwise, or actually it'll be called counterclockwise. Basically, they don't use anti; they say counter. So that's CCW, basically counterclockwise, 14mm, right? And so that gets attached, and so on. So that's what you would look for. There are different barrels out there and different aftermarket parts that you'll notice that are available. So when you're picking a part, you got to make sure that if you're buying an aftermarket barrel, well, let's rewind for a second. If you were getting a gun like this one right here, right, you have to look at the barrel, see if you can find the picture it has it. So this doesn't have the threads internally or externally, so you can't mount a suppressor. If you were to buy a custom barrel, you would have to find one. I don't know of a place, but I'm sure you can find one if it exists, that has basically threads for the gun in order to screw it on. The WE, for example, right here, again, like I said, doesn't have it, but you can it has the option for you to put on the thread adapter for a suppressor. Another example right here, this is another WE G17 in this case. But this one actually, the original barrel broke, actually, and I had to replace it with the garter one right here. Now this one, you'll notice it's kind of scratched up right there. There's some indents in there, but that's just the typical polygonal rifling that they were trying to imitate of the original Glock barrel for when the round comes out and it spins, basically, right? But that's not actually, those aren't actually like threads that you can attach a thread adapter to in order to mount a suppressor. So that's not going to be helpful. That's more of just like a mock imitation of the real steel, essentially. So keep that in mind too when you're looking down there. So that won't help you either. A lot of those folks are also wondering about the Marui system. Most of the Maruis don't come with threads. This happens to be an upper of a G18 right here. This is one of those, the one of the select fire for fully automatic or semi-automatic. And had a hard time getting the orange cap off right there. But if you look carefully, again, very similar scenario. Pretty much smooth on the inside with some, not quite, but it has that same mock rifling, polygonal rifling in the inside. But again, that's just for imitation of the real steel and has nothing to do with any function in the airsoft world. And certainly won't mount this right here for any, won't mount this at all, right? So you won't be able to do it in this situation. But that's not the whole story, because you also got to wonder about, this is an Elite Force G17 right here. In this case, right, it does have the polygon, or not the polygonal rifling, it has the, looks like there are threads on internally, right? As you can see, it's kind of jagged a little bit right there, right? That means, okay, maybe it can work, but again, you also have to find the one that's the right size too, that fits that. I don't know what size this one is. I don't have one right here. So for example, this one here, even though you saw it fit in the WE G17, it won't fit into this one right here. It's just too, this one's too small, and the thread diameter here is just too big, so it won't fit. So it's kind of a pick and play thing. So I would recommend that you, if you were to get a particular replica here, right, the first thing you want to check is, does it look like it's smooth or threaded, right? That answers your question right off the bat, whether or not you're going to be able to support a suppressor, at least stocked from the manufacturer, right? If it's smooth and no extension right there, that's it, right? End of story. You can't do anything, or you have to buy aftermarket parts for it. If it already comes with the little thread already attached, right? So like you buy it and it's like, you know, attached right here, and it looks kind of like something like this, right? Then the next question you got to ask yourself is it a counterclockwise, 14 millimeter counterclockwise, or 14 millimeter clockwise, right? Certain brands like the G&P, they kind of tend to do clockwise, whereas everything else is counterclockwise. So the counterclockwise are negative, and the clockwise ones are positive, right? So think of it that way. And then of course, then it comes down to the gamble, and the part is like, you might be in a situation like this Elite Force here where it's threaded, and then you buy a piece and it doesn't seem to work. And there's just really no good way of knowing that unless you have experience with it, unfortunately. But the good news is that if you buy a thread adapter, this is only about like $7 or something like that, right? And so if you buy it and it doesn't fit, you know, hey, whoops, then it's not the big deal. So I would buy the gun first, know that it has an option to do it first, or a possibility. Then you go buy the adapter to see if it works or not. And if that works, then right, then you can get the suppressor, right? Because oftentimes these suppressors are a lot more expensive than sometimes even the original replica themselves. So that's something to think about right there. Hopefully that illustrates kind of the point I was talking about. And then, because I think that helps explain the concept of which replica here will be able to mount a suppressor and which won't. And by just looking at the barrel right there, you can kind of tell whether it will or won't. And that tells you a lot of it, right? It only gets a little bit harder once you have ones that are maybe slightly different sizes. I know that's a little bit long-winded, but I think this might help this particular subscriber. Anyone else who's actually looking for a more detailed explanation of whether or not they would be able to mount one or not. All right, hope that you all found that helpful. See y'all next time.